So it appears that Netflix's The Witcher adaptation is quickly sinking in season three. Only 5 of the 8 episodes are out. We have season three, part one. But already fans are jumping ship as quickly as possible. And that's just the numbers. According to Samba TV, which reports on TV viewership for streaming, this is reported first in Deadline. The premiere of season three is down 15% to 1.1 million U.S. households from 1.3 million for season two. But the most interesting thing is that each subsequent episode out of the 5 have decreasing viewership. So 1.1 million viewers for episode 1, 893,000 for episode 2, 760,000 for episode 3, 602,000 for episode 4, and all the way down to 505,000 for episode 5. That's half of the viewers that watched episode 1. Now, what's kind of important about this, 2 things. First of all, in season 2, every episode in the first week stayed above 1 million viewers. So there wasn't this capsizing of viewers in the second season. Every single one, all 8, had 1 million or more U.S. households tune in the first week. Whereas in season 3, we've seen half the audience jump ship by the 5th episode. Now, one thing that people have been saying about Netflix, about The Witcher on Netflix this season, is they're saying, well, look, it was separated into 2 chunks. So what we're seeing, maybe, theoretically, possibly, this isn't a reasonable argument, what we're seeing is a lot of people holding off watching the show, waiting for part 2 to drop on July 27th, waiting for all 8 episodes to drop so that they can binge them. Now, that's a reasonable thing to argue, I think. However, this information sort of puts a lie to it. If everyone was simply waiting, we would see lower numbers across the board, right? If everyone was saying, okay, well, we're going to wait. If enough people were saying, we're going to wait until all 8 episodes are out, then we would have seen a lower episode 1 and then consistent numbers across the first 5, because all the people that tuned in to the first 5 would be watching consistently those 5 episodes, whereas everyone who's waiting, that their numbers wouldn't really figure into those, right? Because everyone's waiting. Those people aren't watching episode 1. They're not watching any of the episodes. Instead, we see 1.1 million households down to 505,000 households over the course of 5 episodes. And this is, in my review of this season, of this half of the season, I said it starts off strong, fizzles out, and then crashes and burns. That was my headline, basically. And these numbers reflect that to some degree. It starts out, I think episode 1 was pretty good. Had some weird, had some little plot holes and stuff, but overall we had some good fight scenes. Some cool stuff happened in the first episode. And ironically, I think the first episode of season 2 is also probably the best episode, and from there it kind of went downhill. Episode 2, also pretty strong episode. I think probably the best part of that episode was the monster, which was when Geralt goes to that castle and finds those girls that have been cut up and turned into a monstrous monster thingamajigger, straight out of Elden Ring. That was pretty cool. That was probably the coolest monster of the season. Not that there have been very many monsters this season, and most of them have been kind of jokey CGI monsters. But from there, every episode gets worse until the 5th episode, which is a true abomination of television. I mean, bad for this show standards, but just bad in general. Really, really, I wrote a piece on my blog saying that Netflix should actually fix it, and it is fixable. Episode 5, the biggest problem with episode 5 is that the editing is so poorly done. They keep on repeating chunks of what happened at the ball as they flash back and flash forward, but instead of just showing us a little bit, anchoring us in the moment so that we know where we are in the timeline, they repeat whole large sections of dialogue, and not just dialogue, but just the blocking and everything. And it's a very poorly put together flashback, flash forward episode. It didn't have to be that way, and with better editing, you could actually fix up that episode. You couldn't undo certain things. I know a lot of people are very upset by Jaskier being bisexual now. I personally don't find that terrible, but I do think it's kind of weird to make characters gay who are not gay in the source material. Especially some of them, like Radovid. I feel like they're making the bad guys all gay, which is kind of a weird old-fashioned trope there. But I do think that it would be better just to introduce new characters who are gay rather than sexuality swapping. Is that a thing? Sexuality swapping? It's like, oh, hey, let's just make Jaskier the bard gay, even though he's not. I'd just rather see a new character that's gay. I mean, if you want to have representation for LGBTQ, that's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the context of this story. I think it works quite well in this world. There's whatever. I don't care, but it is weird. And so, what another thing that I think bothers me more than that is the Radovid Jaskier thing could have been so interesting just as kind of a kind of a weird friendship, like an admirationship, maybe with maybe the little hints of possible attraction, but it doesn't actually go there, and it keeps, I think that's more interesting than just going full bore oh, now they're just gonna fuck each other. But that would require a little artistry rather than just sort of hitting us over the head with this, really, which boils down to just kind of bad writing. Anyways, point being, this show has collapsed, and I think a lot of that is Cavill leaving, and I think that Cavill's leaving is largely because the show, even when he's there, has descended into just shitty writing and an aimless, generic, uninteresting world that didn't have to be this way. Netflix had a gold mine. If they had simply taken CD Projekt Red's approach to adapting these books and creating an authentic, believable, plausible world with the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard, giving us a story that we could follow, giving us a monster of the week approach, giving us characters that made sense and that followed and were true to the spirit of the characters of the books. It didn't even have to follow the books to the letter, but it had to follow the spirit of the books, the aesthetic, and the lore and everything else. Again, I won't even beat this to death because I've said this a lot, but I really do think that if you're going to adapt something, adapt it as truthfully and as honestly as possible. If you want more diverse stories, then by God, adapt some other cultures as well. If you're going to tap into European mythology and lore and fantasy, do that, fine. But let's also go and let's have more shows like Kingdom that take place in a medieval Korea. Let's have all of that, and I would love to see more of that. So, anyways, the numbers don't seem to be lying. I don't think that the next 3 episodes will change these numbers much. And if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, you can see that the audience score is lower than it's ever been. And there's been an interesting shift because in season 1, the audience score was higher than the critic score. That shifted in season 2. Critic score went up as more critics hopped on the bandwagon. And I guess maybe as the show started appealing to your mainstream critics more, as obviously it started to do. And the audience score went down. And then this season, again, audience score way down. Critic score still high. Now, you can't trust critic scores on TV shows for one very good reason. It has nothing to do with politics or anything like that. Critic scores are based on the initial review. So on Rotten Tomatoes, let's say 100 critics are given 2 episodes as screeners for a season that's 10 episodes long. This is just an example. Based on those 2 episodes, a bunch of critics write positive reviews because maybe those first 2 episodes are badass. Now, let's say the other 8 just descend into total shenanigans. It's just awful. Plot holes. Yada, yada, yada. Doesn't matter. All that Rotten Tomatoes does is count those initial reviews. So if whatever Netflix, Amazon, or whatever gives out 2 episodes, and those 2 episodes are great, all these critics are like, this is such a great show, and it's only based on, they even say this is based on the first 2 episodes. No one's hiding anything. That's what the score is going to be based on. Every single review after that, even if all those critics continue reviewing the show, which most of them won't, but let's say all the people doing recaps and reviews of the weekly, every single episode, they say, this is garbage, this is garbage, this is garbage. Won't matter. I mean, and this is why some shows like Rings of Power or Willow that maybe got an initially good impression from critics, although I don't know how Willow did because it actually got better as it went on and was really bad in the beginning. But they'll start with a high score based just on people watching maybe the first 2 episodes. And then even though the rest of the season is shit, that high score remains. And so, see, it's not even that you can't trust the critics, it's that you can't trust how this aggregate system is working on Rotten Tomatoes. So never believe the TV score of a Rotten Tomato. Its movies are much, much, much more accurate simply because there's only one movie. Everyone watches that movie, and that's what the score is based off of. So something really should change at Rotten Tomatoes, but it's not going to. I doubt it'll ever change. So, anyways, that's all I really have to say. I am so sad about this. I really do. I do love The Witcher, and I think it was such a promising start in season 1, and having Henry Cavill as Geralt was just like a godsend, like manna from fucking heaven. And Netflix and the showrunner and the writers all decided that they knew better, and that it was more important to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. When you try to appeal to everybody, you ultimately appeal to nobody, or you alienate the fans because you take what's good about this thing and you dilute it and you make it palatable to everybody. And that's not what we want from art in general, from music. You don't want to take an interesting indie band and take their sound and just turn it into something generic that's easy on the ears for everybody. Like, that's not good. Yeah, sure, maybe more people will like it, and then it becomes just like a pop song that, but that's not what we want from art. And this should be art, right? This should not just be appealing to everyone because it's representing everyone and yada, 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 yada. Like, this is why I call it corpo diversity. Corpo, it's greed. It's not about all these things, what we call the message or whatever. None of it is about making the world a better place for more people. None of it is about helping people or representing minorities or anything. It's about making more money. It's about greed, and it's about suckering, it's about suckering everybody into this, making everybody think that that's this good intentioned thing. Oh yeah, we're representing. We've got black elves, so now that represents black people. No, it doesn't. Like, you're not actually trying. You're just using tokenistic bullshit to make money because you're a bunch of greedy bastards. That's all it is. So, anyways, thing about cash grabs is they generally fail, and people wise up pretty quickly, and that's what's happening right now. We're seeing a bunch of people making a show that they don't understand, and they're losing the one guy who really does, and it's a fucking tragedy. Anyways, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, be excellent to each other. Peace.